The lost 10 tribes are now amongst Western peoples. The Bible tells us that originally there were 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes of Israel divided into two different sections. They split apart. The northern section, comprising the majority of the bulk of the Hebrew nation, was conquered by the Assyrians and taken into exile. They disappeared. They'd already been pagans, virtually pagans, before their exile. After the exile, this process was quickened, intensified, and a lot of different changes took place. But somehow they stayed together, even though they were forced by external circumstances to move about, to migrate. They migrated to the north, to the west. Eventually they converged in the northwest and they populated the areas that are now those of Western Europe and the British Isles. From there they populated the USA and Canada, Australia, New Zealand and other nations. And that is where their descendants are now to be found. That is where the lost 10 tribes are now to be found, and they are the majority, or at least the qualitatively determinating element, the qualitatively determining element amongst those peoples. And concerning which nations are descend from the lost 10 tribes, which nations are not, we use criteria that work, based on the Bible, based on empirical evidence, and they work. These criteria, we brought them down to 7 in number. They involved belief in God, the blessings. Was promised that the lost 10 tribes would benefit in the end times from economic and physical blessings, and in the time leading up into that, this was what was promised to Israel, and we find this fulfilled amongst nations we identified in the West as belong to the lost 10 tribes. We also have other indications of scripture, that is biblical indications, telling us what areas the lost 10 tribes will be in, and these two are applicable. The lost 10 tribes should be, to identify a nation as belong to the lost 10 tribes, it should be within the regions. The Bible indicates in the end times they will be there. We have groundwork, archaeological, historical, linguistic and related proofs that confirm this. We also find that, relatively speaking, they should be pro-Jewish or not antipathetic to Jews. They should be sympathetic to Jews. They are distant brothers of the Jewish people. Judah is also part of Israel, and Judah is a part of Israel that did not lose his identity. So therefore there should be some feeling of brotherhood at a basic level between the two sections. The Jews have been persecuted, they've been victimized, they've been in a difficult situation, so some degree of sensitivity and allowance should be extended to them. Another point is that the lost 10 tribes should be civilized and civilizing. Relatively speaking to the Gentile nations, they should be at a higher level. And this is what we find. They also should have a family connection to each other. That is, if we identify one country as belonging to the lost 10 tribes, as other countries that are ethnically related to it should also, most likely, also belong to those 10 tribes. So that is another point that we need to find, and we have to find some tribal affiliation, that we maybe identify each nation, each ethnicity, each ethnic group as belonging or pertaining to one other of these Israelite tribes. And that is what we do find. And we find nations, we identify specific nations in the West. With the lost 10 tribes, we find that the tribe of Joseph was the most important tribe to have become dominant amongst the Anglo-Saxon English-speaking peoples, that is the peoples of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the USA, and the Isles of Britain. That is where the tribes of Joseph are to be found. We also found elements, offshoots of Joseph amongst European countries that belong to lost 10 tribes, but in those areas, other tribes were predominant over them. And so too, we have individuals amongst these areas should be able to identify each themselves as belong to one of the tribes of Israel. Live in an Israelite area, so the chances are that you are also of Israelite stock, of Israelite origin. And not only that, if that area is dominated, relatively speaking, by an Israelite tribe, so if you pertain to any tribe, the chances are that you would belong to the tribe that dominates in that area. And that is what we find in someone who believes or feels that they should or could belong to an Israelite tribe. So that is a good place to begin with. Where are you? Where are you from? Where are you now to be found? And what tribe does it appear that the majority of Israelites in that area also pertain to? So that is a beginning. It's not so simple, it goes beyond that. There are other factors involved. First of all, we find in an area, a country like the USA, that there were many other peoples there, other peoples who are not all of them from the lost tribes of Israel. And not only that, that even though Joseph dominates in those areas, we also have elements from all of the tribes in those areas. It is, if to say, a type of assembly point for all of the Israelites in the end times, that the majority of Israelites are in that area, and they come from all 12 tribes. And so, even though you yourself might feel that you're Israelite, you do not necessarily belong to the majority Israelite element from the tribal point of view of that region. So we use other criteria, and other criteria, other indications help us on an individual level, or may help us on an individual level to further define our appreciation of it. And if not, it helps us to elevate a sensitivity on this matter, and leads us along a path that will eventually, God willing, get us to where we need to get concerning this aspect of identification. So as we said, we find Joseph to be amongst English-speaking peoples. On the whole, in principle, Ephraim dominates in the British and offshoots of the British, but also many from Ephraim are to be found in the USA, even though the USA on the whole reflects Manasseh. Manasseh and Ephraim were the two tribes of Joseph. They were quite different from each other. We'll return to that in another episode. So concerning Joseph, the question is now, do we belong to Joseph? Or what traits may descendants of Joseph expect to find? So we find that Rachel was the mother of Joseph. Abraham, Isaac and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Jacob was renamed Israel. Still gave birth to 12 tribes. Israel had 4 wives. His 2 major wives were Leah and Rachel, who were sisters. Bilhah was a handmaiden to Rachel, and Zilpah was a handmaiden to Leah. And it appears that all of the tribes, from the scripture, at the simple level, that all of the wives had given birth to sons before Rachel did. 10 sons had already been born to Leah, and Zilpah and Bilhah, the wives of Jacob, before Rachel also gave birth. And Rachel gave birth first to Joseph and then to Benjamin. And when Rachel became pregnant and gave birth, she said, as we find in Genesis 30, it says she became pregnant. She gave birth to a son, and she said, God has removed my disgrace. God has removed my disgrace. She named him Joseph, for she said, may the Lord add yet another son to my family. So in the Hebrew has a double meaning. Very often Hebrew words have more than one meaning, and usually both meanings are intended, or one meaning is intended and the other meaning gives a secondary importance to the expression. So we have, when Rachel became pregnant, she gave birth to a son, and she said, God has removed my disgrace. So this word removed in Hebrew is asaf, meaning literally gathered up. But it can also connote Joseph, add, increase. It's a play on words. It says, God has removed my disgrace, asaf my sympathy, and she named him Joseph. She said, may the Lord add yet another son to my family. And so she predicted that another son would be born to her, and that would be Benjamin. And this word asaf, meaning gathered up, can also imply getting together. And Shem Mishmul in the 1800s is a commentator, and he points out this word asaf is from the name Joseph is from the root asaf, gather together, and it pertains to the destiny of Joseph, which is to gather together and unify the tribes of Israel. In the end times, the Messiah, son of Joseph, will come, and he will gather together the tribes of Joseph, especially the lost 10 tribes, and he will bring them together, and he will initiate their reunion with Judah. And then after him will come the Messiah, son of David, and the future redemption. So this expression of Rachel, she said, the verse says, Genesis 30, 24, it says, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. God has removed my disgrace. She named him Joseph. So what disgrace was there to remove? So it could, apparently the indications are that Rachel was in the with the 4 wives of Jacob, and all of the wives had been given birth, had been bearing sons. Leah had given birth to 6 sons, Bilhah to 2 sons, Zilpah to 2 sons. Altogether that makes 10, and Rachel up until then had not been been doing anything on the front, had not been doing anything as far as increasing the sons of the family was concerned. And she felt as if perhaps there was something wrong with her. She felt ashamed in the eyes of her fellow wives. And so when Joseph was born, her disgrace, this feeling of disappointment was removed. The birth of Joseph was the instrument of removing this disgrace. So do you have that aspect? Do you have that aspect of feeling empathy towards someone? Sometimes do you see people who are in trouble, or in where you learn in your school or in your place of work, or amongst the people you associate with, when you see someone who's not getting along, not fitting in, but there's no real reason for it, and do you have a certain empathy towards him? Do you feel a need to reach out and help such a person? Is that an aspect of your character? So this would be associated with Joseph, because that is what Joseph does. That is what happened when Joseph was born. That is a defining aspect of Joseph, that he gathers up, he brings in the good in order to take away the bad. He helps others. And that is also an aspect of the USA. We have the famous Statue of Liberty. Emma Lazarus, who incidentally was Jewish. Emma Lazarus wrote a poem that was inscribed on the new Colossus on the Statue of Liberty. And it says, amongst other things, it refers to it as representing the USA, a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles, Mother of Exiles. From a beacon hand glows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command. There bridge harbour the twin cities flame. Keep patient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The wretched refuse of your dreaming shore. Send these the homeless tempest-tossed to me. I live my lamp beside the golden door. In other words, give me your rejects, give me the people you don't want. Give me those who know what to go, and let me give them unto me, and I will make a people out of them. And that's what the USA did. Took people from all over the world, and it made a people out of them. And it seems there's a good portion of the people that are made, that are used, were descendants of Joseph, descendants of lost ten tribes. And that was what Joseph does. That was what Joseph was born to do. Now, it might be objected that maybe they've gone too far. Maybe nowadays a lot of the people trying to come in or wanting to come into the USA, they're not of Israelite stock. They're fifth colony. They are possibly not of Israelite origin, and they are liable to undo the USA, undo America. So that is another point that you have to work out for yourselves. At everything in its time and place. Everything in its time and place, and all events. The instinctive reaction of someone from Joseph is to help others when they need that help, especially those who can be helped. You have a problem that people don't want to be helped, who do not necessarily deserve to be helped. So everything in its time and place. But at least there should be this basic willingness to give help to those who need it when you're able to do so, especially when it can be used by those who need this help, especially when it can be used to advantage to make a new start. Birth of Joseph removed disgrace. Joseph is associated with the renewal, the ability to make a fresh start. Redemption. The future redemption of the 10 tribes will come through Joseph, through the Messiah, son of Joseph. And through that redemption will come the ultimate redemption, the liberation of all of humanity. They will be lifted up. The eyes of darkness, the clouds of darkness will be removed from them. They will know the truth. They will cease to go in their reprobate ways and their froward inclinations. Most of them are not that good people at present. They need to be liberated. They need to be re-educated. Many of them, or the majority of them, for instance, are against the state of Israel, against the Jews, even though the Jews haven't done anything. And even if they had have done something, would be nothing towards what they themselves have been doing. Nevertheless, they blame the Jews for everything. And the only people who are inclined to give Judah a fair go, to help Judah stand up to the world, that is the people of the USA and the people of Canada, of Australia and New Zealand and the British Isles, and also some other nations of Europe, and all of these peoples are those who pertain to the 10 tribes of Israel.